So today we are going to talk about change. So change is something that, well, we all know about, right? Especially this past year. I'm sure we've all had to go through some changes this year. And that's pretty much what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to share a screen, a PowerPoint screen. That way we can all view it together. So I believe it just said it's going to maybe mute you. So all that means is I'm gonna have you guys interact a little bit. So all that means is chat, use the chat box. Okay, so can everybody see my PowerPoint presentation? All right, perfect. So today we're going to talk about the 4 stages of change. So what that means is that anytime that we have to make a change, and we all know that change can be good, right? Yet scary. We have to go through these 4 stages of change in order to be able to attain the change and maintain it, okay? So what this is called is the trans-theoretical model of change. It's actually been around for 25 years. It was created by Dr. James Prochaska, and it's basically based on behavior change, because that's what change is, right? It's a change in behavior. It's changing our routine. And it's specifically, the research was with exercise adoption, addiction, and smoking cessation. But again, this can deal with any type of change. So if we can all think right now of any change that we are thinking about making, whether you've started to make the change or you know that you have to make a change in something, you just don't want to do it. So it can be anything. It could be something in your nutrition or exercise, or it can be maybe a move, something dealing with the pandemic, a family issue, a relationship, any change you want to make, just think of it. And maybe if you want to share it with us in the chat box, that's wonderful. Or if it's something private to you, just write it down on a piece of paper, keep it in the back of your head. Just, that way you can make it a little bit more, relevant as we go through these changes. Because again, change can be scary, right? But sometimes what's scarier is not making that change. And looking back on should I, could have, I should have, I never did, or seeing somebody that made the same change that you wanted to make, okay? So the 4 stages of change, and I have 5 here, but that's because the 5th one is maintenance, right? So that's kind of the goal. But the 4 stages of change are pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and action. I was just looking at the chat box. So I'm going to go through these 4 changes. So the first stage of change is pre-contemplation. Sometimes this slide sticks, so I'm going to have you bear with me. It's going to go into the next slide. But so imagine of a change that you have to make, right? So I'm going to give more of an example, because here at the Mind, Music, and Movement Foundation, we mainly deal with neurodegenerative diseases. So I'm going to kind of relate an example to that. But again, you can think of your own example. So let's say that you, over the past years, noticed some changes in your sleeping patterns. You started having nightmares. Maybe your digestive system wasn't working. You started, maybe just feeling really stiff and whatnot. You go to the doctor with your spouse and you got Parkinson's, not an easy pill to swallow. So not only is that a big hit in the face change, but now your doctor says to you, I'm going to have you put you in this medication. And there's also a lot of research on changes, more lifestyle changes, which include nutrition and exercise. That's huge, right? So your spouse loves you and she says, you know what? You get out of the doctor's appointment. She's Googling things up on the internet. She's getting you to that center that's going to change, your exercise lifestyle because you don't exercise right now. Yeah, sure, you may go play golf with your buddies or play tennis, which is wonderful, by the way. I mean, we can go into that, but this is more of, balance training, cardiovascular, cognitive training, and so forth. Okay, so she's Googling things up, and you're not ready to make that change. So again, going back to the stages, there's 4 stages. There's the first one is pre-contemplation, where you are, you have to make a change, you're just not ready for it. The second stage is contemplation, where you're still not ready to make that change, but you're thinking about it. So these 2 stages are the hardest ones because you're not dumb. You went into that doctor's office, right? You know what's going on, but you don't want to make those changes. But your loved ones are in your ear and they want you to make those changes. So for the loved ones, if there's loved ones in this room, or maybe whoever views this later, when you are with somebody that wants to make a change, if you can see they're not ready for it, don't push them. Because again, they know they have to make that change. They just have to be ready for it themselves. So the best thing as a loved one that we can do is just, hey, my love, I know that you're dealing with this. Whenever you're ready to make that first step that the doctor says, I'm here, I'm in the same house with you. Maybe if you Googled, for example, I'm going to say mind music movement, that's specifically what we deal with, so just leave the information. Don't tell them to call, don't make an appointment, just leave them the information. So that, because again, you have to be ready for yourself. So you got to let that person be ready. So we go in pre-contemplation, where you don't want to make the change. Contemplation, when you start thinking about it. Preparation, where you're a little bit more ready, so you're preparing. And then you go into action. And then once action is consistent and you go through your good things and bad things, then maintenance. All of a sudden you're doing this change for a long time. Okay, so that's kind of what we're going to go through as we move on. So it is very important when we start thinking about a change to know what stage we're in, right? So if you're not ready to make that change, that's okay. You're in pre-contemplation, okay? Or what if you started thinking about it, right? And you're starting to think of ways to do it, then you're in planning. Or what if you just started making the change, but it's new, you're in action, okay? So it's very important to know what stage we're at. So again, if you wrote down a change that you want to make, or if you shared it here in the chat, I know Beth, okay, exercise and, weight management. And I know Beth earlier had said nutrition. So what stage are you at? Have you started moving yet? Or have you never exercised before? Or what part of weight management is challenging for you? Is it the portion control? Is it that you don't even know what to eat because you've always eaten what your parents taught you to eat? Back in the day when we had to clean out our plates and you kind of just ate what was served to you. So what is it? What about nutrition is challenging? So again, knowing what stage we're in is very important. Again, I apologize, my slides stick. So now we're going to go into the first stage, which is the pre-contemplation stage. So that stage is what we call the I won't or I can't stage. So this stage is the hardest one. And it's also sometimes the one that we sit in the longest because you either don't want to make a change, so you're an I won't person. So you don't want to join that new modality of exercise your doctor told you to, because it involves a lot. It may be expensive. You may have to cut other activities. Maybe you never exercised before in your life. Or you may be in that I can't stage because it's scary. The I can't portion of pre-contemplation is one of the hardest because, again, you're scared. You may never have done it in the past, or maybe in the past you failed. Maybe you did try a new form of exercise and you just failed. Or maybe you have yo-yo dieted for a long time. So that's, again, where you have to kind of figure out why you want to make that change, why it's important. Okay. So the more you think about it, you go from pre-contemplation to contemplation. So now you've thought about that change more. So now the benefits of that change start outweighing the pros start outweighing the cons, right? So again, back to the person that got diagnosed with Parkinson's. They still don't want to go, try that new modality of exercise. But what would that person's life look like in 3 years if they do make that change? So would maybe that morning, time that they have opening up the newspaper and looking at the newspaper, maybe giving that up and starting exercise, maybe that's worth, giving up in order to have that change in the future. So you kind of have to start brainstorming on your own, because again, you have to create that want on your own. So there is work involved. It doesn't come easy. These are just the steps that we have to take. Okay, so again, thinking of why you even are thinking of that change. But at this stage, the contemplation, your ambivalence to make that change starts getting lower. Again, because those pros start getting higher on the totem pole. So in this stage, it's very important to get in touch with our strengths, because our strengths are what are going to get us to our goal. So again, so now in a little bit of brainstorming and figuring out our strengths can be very challenging. We all have them. We're all the people that we are because of our strengths. So if you ran a successful business, or if you are the proud parent of grown children or grandchildren, what are the strengths that took you there? And again, in a little bit of brainstorming, think of that yourself. What is something that you have accomplished in your life that you're proud of? So what's the strength that you have? Is it gratitude? Is it maybe that every day you wake up and you're grateful for the life that you have, and that gives you a little bit of strength to move forward? Is it that you're loyal? Maybe you were a loyal employee somewhere and you became successful. You're really loyal to others, and that's created you to where you are. So again, finding, and this is, again, we're teaming up. If you're in this stage and if you're ready for it, maybe Googling on the internet different strengths. There is a model to find what your strengths are, and I can forward you that if anybody wants to inbox us later. Or, joining a place that does have a wellness coach that can walk you through the steps of finding your strengths. But getting in touch with your strengths is very important, at least your top 3 or 4, I mean. Getting information on the benefits of that change is really important, because again, you want to know why it's worth it for you to make that lifestyle change, because you're changing routine, you're changing your entire life. So why is it even important? So really getting information on the benefits. So again, back to my Parkinson's example, what exactly is the benefits of exercise? So that's why on your own, you can maybe start going on the internet, or maybe, contacting somebody like us, My Music Movement. I would tell you that the reason that you want cardio is because it creates the BDNF in the brain. That's the communication from the back of the brain to the front of the brain, and then you want to incorporate some cognitive training, reaction training with that exercise, and some balance and some flexibility. So that's when you start getting information of the benefits of the change that you want to make. So past successes is also, it's almost like how you're looking on your strengths. So think of times that you were faced with challenges and you overcame them. How did you do that? So even though those past challenges may not be relevant to this challenge that you're dealing with now in your life, a challenge is a challenge, right? And back when you overcame it, that was new as well. So kind of think of your past successes, and creating small goals. So that's a very important one. And then contemplation, you're thinking of small goals, but you're not doing them yet. Because again, you don't want to rush into anything. This is a very long, it doesn't have to be long, but it can be, but it's little by little. So in thinking of small goals, it's almost like if we're talking about nutrition, right? Weight management, maybe eating, the small portions that are recommended is too much to handle right now because you got a busy social life. It's the end of season. You're going out to dinner every night. But what if you don't drink water at all? So maybe a small goal for this week is to drink the recommended amount of water for your body weight. Because what happens is that success breeds on success. So even though right now you're not touching on the nutrition and you want to lose weight, but in the next 2 weeks, you started drinking water that you never did before. Well, now that's a habit and you can make a change. So then maybe next time you can move on to what you're going to do when you go to dinner and so forth, So same thing in the person with Parkinson's example, maybe a goal would be to look up different fitness centers, foundations, or coaches that would be appropriate for that person. They don't have to call anybody, but just looking up options. That's a small goal. And then understanding what challenges are going to come. You don't have to think of all of them, but there's a reason you're not ready to make that change, and it's because there's challenges. So just getting in touch, as much as it's important to get in touch with our motivators, it's important to get in touch with our challenges. So we just went from pre-contemplation, which is I won't or I can't, to contemplation, which is okay, I'm still not ready to, but I'm getting there, right? The pros are outweighing the cons. I know what my challenges are. I started brainstorming of maybe possible ways. I know what some of my strengths are. So now I'm in preparation. So, and also as you move up through these changes, so if you remember my first slide, there's a reason why the person is going up the little ladder, right? Because at the bottom, when she's in pre-contemplation, she's got no idea of how she's going to make that change. So when you were at the doctor's office and your doctor just told you of all the changes that you need to make, and your spouse and your kids are telling you that you need to do this like tomorrow, you're going, oh my goodness. So you're at the bottom. But then you started thinking about it and you climbed up that step, right? And now that you brainstormed and you know your challenges, you're in that third step. You're in the planning stage. So now you're in the I will stage. So this stage is a little more fun. It's challenging and it's scary, but it's more fun because now the pros outweigh the cons. So in this stage, you almost take that little list of challenges and the brainstorms that you did, and you start experimenting. So in the person that needs to start an exercise routine, I work with somebody that a couple of years ago when they got diagnosed, they didn't do any cardio. So they tried spin, right? Why not? So it goes into a spin class, hates spin. Sweaty people are screaming, not his cup of tea. So this is where instead of trial and error, it's trial and correction. And I should have put a slide. That to me is a really important line because it deals with anything in life, really. Because it's so easy to try something new and just throw in the towel and say, oh my, that's it, I did it, and then somebody goes, but you should have done this, and you say, but I did it and I didn't like it. So this person then liked the spin class, and instead of just saying, you know what, I tried it and I don't want to exercise, I don't care what you or the doctor says, he went and tried something else. And long term, he ended up hiring me, which I thank the spouse, but that, that's a whole other story. But what I'm trying to explain is that he really followed trial and correction. Why? Because he knew he had to make that change. He saw his body start regressing, and in his head, he knew that he had to make that change in order to have a good quality of life, in order to be able to socialize with his friends and go to dinners, in order to continue to play golf, in order to be able to travel and see his kids. This person's a really big family person. So he started, and he ended up not only, using me for exercise, but he found himself finding his own types of exercises, so now he does his cardio, he does a pickleball on his own. And he just, again, success builds on success, where he created a new life that he enjoys and is helping him. So again, trial and correction, that's huge. So that's one of the things that I want everybody to go home with. So again, if you whatever change that you thought about, and if you thought of some strengths. If you think that you're in a planning stage, and again, you may not be, but again, think of some things that you wouldn't mind trying, right? So that's, again, the brainstorming idea, because that's a huge thing in trial and correction, is we want to brainstorm. Creativity. It may sound like a silly thing to try. Like, what if you don't like fitness centers at all? Trying virtual. That can be pretty silly. But what's the worst that can happen? You don't like it, right? Then you don't have to do it again. But what if you do like it? Who knows? And identifying challenging situations. And that can be a challenging one, because a lot of times it has to do with our surroundings. So are the people that you're around, do they not get involved in the change that you want to make? So if it's weight management, are they people that push food on you? Everything is about a cake, and food. Or so is that maybe having a conversation with them and letting them, understand what you want to do in life? Or is it maybe not hanging out with them as much and finding other people to hang out with? Doesn't mean you have to break up with them. And again, this is, I'm just overviewing the different stages, but this is a lot of the thinking work. And that's why change isn't easy, because it does involve a lot of thinking that we have to do on our own. Okay, so identifying those challenging situations. And last but not least, in the preparation change is your SMART goals. So SMART goals, and again, my slides stick, but what that stands for is specific, manageable, action-based, relevant, and timely goals. Okay, so that slide will pop up at some point, I promise. But let's start with the first one, the S. Oh, there we go, specific. All right. So specific is important because, well, you have to make something really specific so you know what your first small goal is. So again, with the example of somebody having to do some form of new exercise, to benefit their mobility and Parkinson's. So a specific goal is not next week I'm going to do cardiovascular exercise, because again, the cardiovascular for Parkinson's is really important because it's what creates the BDNF in your brain, which is what you lose when you have Parkinson's. But so for that person to just say, next week I'm going to walk, that's not specific, because if that's your goal, then what's going to happen next week? You're going to have to go to work, or maybe some emergency with your family is going to happen, or maybe somebody's going to call you to go do something. So maybe just laying out your clothes, your walking clothes, is a small goal. That may sound silly. Maybe other people don't think that's a goal, but that's a goal for sure, because you can create the habit of laying out your clothes in the morning, right? To make it easier. So maybe for the next 2 weeks, you lay out your clothes, and then maybe the week after, that specific goal, because now laying out your clothes is a habit. So then your specific goal is on Tuesdays, because again, in the planning stage, you realize that on Tuesdays, you don't have any activities in the morning. And maybe that's when your wife goes grocery shopping. So you have 30 minutes, right? So on Tuesday, when my wife goes grocery shopping, I will walk for 15 minutes. So that's specific. And again, we want to make the small goals, because then walking is that 15 minutes is going to become a habit. So maybe in 3 weeks, you're walking twice a week for 15 minutes. And again, this seems like our society is very instant gratification. And again, change takes a lot of thinking. And that's why, and also it takes time, because you're changing X amount of years of a habit to something that means a lot to you, but you can't change everything overnight. And that's why a lot of people make a change and they don't maintain it, because they rush into it too much. So what would you rather do? Would you rather rush into something that you're only going to maintain for a month or two, Or would you rather spend 6 months to a year to make a change that you're going to sustain for 10, 20, the rest of your life? To me, I'd rather spend a year towards that goal and have that the rest of my life. I think to me, that was pretty much college, right? You spent 6, 7 years in college, but you benefit from that your entire life, you know? So kind of thinking about it that way, or you raised your kids for what, 18, 20 years to have amazing adults for the rest of your life, you know? So, you know, taking your time and making change is worth it. So that's specific. The second one is measurable. And that one kind of piggybacks off of the measurable or the specific as well, because you want to, you know, write down exactly what you're doing. So measurable is I walked for 15 minutes, right? Once a week for a month. So that's, you measure that. So then now you know that you doubled that by adding the other 15 minutes the following month. You know, or same thing if you do something with nutrition. Okay, so you made the small goal of drinking water. So now you moved on to maybe eating breakfast, which you never ate breakfast before. You know, so now you're having, you know, just I don't want to go in too much into nutrition, but you learned what a healthy breakfast is, and you're having that. So you know exactly what you're having. So that's what the measurable part is. The third one is attainable. And that really goes into how this is a lot of work that you do on your own. And again, it's always easier when you talk to somebody, maybe, you know, like we here at Mind Music Movement have people that, you know, we have like that are your motivators, right? So maybe dealing with a place like that can help you. But you want to make something that goals that are attainable to you, you know, so not what your loved ones are telling you to do. I know your doctor told you that you need to get 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise per day, along with some flexibility, some balance, and some cognitive training, right? And he also told you that you needed to change your diet to Mediterranean diet. And he also told you needed to, you know, start a whole new thing of medications. Well, what's attainable to you? Okay, so just kind of think again, this is all your own work. The fourth one is relevant. So again, you have to make goals that are important to you, not what's important to, you know, somebody else. And again, that's where if we have any loved ones here that have somebody that want to make a change, it's really hard to not be pushy because you love that person, but you have to let them walk. You have to give them the ability to make their own changes. You have to give them the power, because when you push them, you take that power away from them. So you want to let them make that change, which is really hard. You know, change is hard for everybody involved. And especially if we're talking about a neurodegenerative disease, you know, because it changes the dynamics of a lot. So we're making a specific small goal. We're making it's measurable, it's attainable, right? It's what we feel confident we can do, no matter how small it is. And it's relevant, it's important. And it's time-based. So again, you never want to say, you know what, I'm going to start walking in 6 weeks. Well, that says that you're not ready to start walking, period. Start with something that you can do next week, no matter how small it is. Again, go back to those stages. Maybe that small goal is just looking up places that would be good for you to go to. You know, so being time-based. So that's what your SMART goals are. Just going back to the relevant, and I kind of skipped through it. Whenever you make your small goals, they have to be important to you. So you have to figure out why you want to make that change in the first place. So somebody with Parkinson's, why do they want to make those changes in lifestyle? Well, maybe because in 4 years, they want to be able to go to their grandkids or their kids' wedding or grandkids' wedding and, you know, be able to feel good and dance with them, you know, walk your child down the aisle. Or maybe it's because they want to be able to continue their activities with their friends, going out to dinners. Or why does somebody want to lose weight? You know, maybe it's not because their doctor told them they have to lose weight. Maybe it's because they know that when they get together with friends, they don't feel comfortable in their own clothes. You know, so you got to figure out what's relevant to you. And again, that's a very personal thing. And some people share it with others because they like the accountability. Some people don't. You know, that's also how we go back to surrounding yourself in the preparation stage, surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you. You know, and again, I'm just going through these changes quickly. That's when, you know, if you guys have any questions, feel free to email us. I can sit down and you know, talk through this, because this isn't just something that, you know, gets covered in 30 minutes. So after we went from I won't or I can't to maybe I will make that change, to I'm preparing myself for that change. And so now you're prepared, so now I'm in action. Holy moly, I took that list of, you know, of things that I was going to try, and I'm doing it. So you're doing the behavior, you know, you did the action and correction. You maybe talked to your loved ones and told them what you were going to do. So you're doing it. So this is actually fun. As I said, as you go up that ladder, it does become more fun and it does become easier, because success builds on success. You know, so the nutrition person, they started drinking their water, and then they started eating a healthy breakfast. Well, now they felt really good. So now, you know, they started going to restaurants and eating healthier options. You know, so you kind of success builds on success. You get used to all those small changes. Again, you create relationships with people that have similar goals. And it doesn't mean leave your friends and family. You know, that can also mean, you know, join a support group. The great thing with virtual nowadays is that you can do a lot from your own home, you know, which is a pro of this past year. Frame mistakes as learning opportunities. So I know I keep talking about, you know, trial and correction, but also once we get into, if you look at my little thing, you go up, right? So you're into action and maintenance. It's very common for us to step back, and that's okay. That's life, you know, because you may be in action or maintenance, and you may have a death in the family, and you can't not think about your exercise routine right now, or your nutrition, you know, or you didn't have a chance. Maybe you're taking care of somebody, a parent, you know, maybe your parent is 80 or 90 and you were in action, but you right now can't. That is absolutely okay. And that's where, you know, you frame the mistakes as a learning opportunity. So let's say you're taking care of a parent or a loved one that did just get diagnosed with a new disease. And you can't do your action, your new action, maybe now you're into the new fitness routine, but that's okay. But learn from that. So you know that you can't get out of that situation from a long time. So that's when we start brainstorming again, right? So now we went back into planning because life threw us a new situation. So that's where you brainstorm. And moving away from all or nothing, which is really hard. Again, we're instant gratification. So a lot of times it's like, we're going to change everything or we're not going to change anything. And now you're in action. So you already started doing your new behavior. So sometimes people just want to go just to the other extreme. So always think of your SMART goal, right? They're specific, they're manageable, they're attainable, they're relevant, and they're timely. So, you know, just not going all or nothing. Plan a relapse day, you know, so a lot has to do with nutrition, where sometimes allowing yourself to have a day where you aren't in action is good, because you also give yourself the strength to go back to your action, which is a new lifestyle. And if you have, you know, building a support group, you know, discussing any problems that you have, because with anything in life, we're going to have those problems. So again, to go back to the 5 stages, I think this one, I'm so sorry. Just so we can regroup on the 4 stages of change. They're pre-contemplation, where you're not ready to make a change. Either you're scared or you don't want to. We have contemplation, where you're still not ready, but you're thinking about it. Then you go into planning, where you're more ready, right? So you plan and you understand your obstacles and create ways to overcome them. Then you go into action, where you're in your new behavior change. And once you're in action for quite a while, you go into maintenance. And now those changes all became your lifestyle. It's how you live your life. You reached your goal, and you're in that vision that you created back when you didn't think that you could make the change of what your life would look like. You're in that vision. You've reached it. So thank you everyone for listening. Does anybody have any questions? I believe there's a way that Beth can unmute everybody and I can stop sharing my screen. Again, if you guys want this email, or if you have any personal questions, Beth can share my email. I can talk about this all day because I used it on myself quite a bit.
Lilia, that was a fabulous presentation. I thank you so much. I made my own little notes. I never thought I'd be doing that, but I did.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's very interesting when everybody always thinks you have to make this change and you have to do it now. But I like the last part where you said, life happens, something happens, and you have to maybe go back and revisit that plan again. And instead of giving up, you go back and you revisit and you adjust. So I thought that was very valuable for me in this presentation. Carol, anybody have something to say?
My now notes here.
Good.
Can go back to it. So I really loved it. Very nice.
That's fantastic. And as you said, writing this down, it's almost kind of like Beth said, making your notes so you can go back and look through them. Even if you're, whatever stage you're at, just looking at those notes can remind you of what you thought about today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It really was my pleasure. And as I said, if anybody has any questions and wants to email me or anything, feel free.
Thank you so much.
It was very good.
Thank you all. You can email us at info@mymusicmovement.org and Lilia will get your email, and we appreciate your time. Have a great evening. We will be doing webinar Wednesdays continuously, and you will be notified via our newsletter or email. So thank you all for joining.